You are one portrait edit away from your best photo of the year, and this video gives you the exact blueprint on how to get there in a fraction of the time. What's up, everybody? Jaron Fritz, aka FrizzyVisuals. I'm the creative director of Colorado State Athletics with multiple years of professional sports science and photography experience, and today I'm breaking down my complete step-by-step basketball portrait editing process so you can plug this straight into your own workflow and level up immediately. I am breaking down 3 shots from this season, each with its own editing challenge, and by the time we finish, you will know how to fix up any portrait you shoot for the rest of the year. And if you're into this kind of content, I have a lot more on the way, a full behind the scenes of me shooting my first NBA game, plus a complete breakdown of traveling with the team to Battle for Atlantis tournament in the Bahamas. So make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any exclusive behind the scenes content. Photo number 1 starts underexposed. In team huddles, the players usually block the light and the subject falls into shadow. I also accidentally bumped my aperture to 3.2, which made it even darker. So the first thing we're going to do is drag the exposure up about a full stop, then start introducing some clarity, texture, and dehaze into the mix. These are my go-tos for any image. Now that we have a better base, we are still wildly underexposed, so I'm bumping the exposure up again while tweaking clarity, texture, and dehaze until everything starts to feel balanced. One of my favorite portrait tricks is a hair mask. It instantly adds texture, character, and separation between your subject and the background when it's executed correctly. We're just going to go to our masks, select people, then hair. We're trying to pull out those highlights, so inside the mask we'll bump the clarity, texture, and whites up. When you flip back and forth, the change is subtle, but it makes the portrait look so much better. A basic hair mask made a huge difference here. I rely on it for nearly every portrait, and in the next edits you'll see how strong it becomes when combined with advanced adjustments like eye work and sweat detail. Photo number 2 is a close-up of the sharpshooter himself, Josh Pasquarelli, and just like any portrait, we start with the basic styling and the lighting, then adding clarity, texture, and a little dehaze to bring everything to life. Then we jump into our hair mask and punch up the whites, texture, and clarity. Every head of hair is different, so the exact values will change from portrait to portrait. You just want to tweak it until it feels right. Now, the new technique on this photo is bringing the eyes to life. We'll do it with 2 separate masks, one for the sclera and another for the iris and pupils, so we can control each area cleanly and make the eyes pop without overdoing it. Step 1 is selecting the whites of the eyes, the sclera. We want to give them a soft, controlled brightening. The moment it looks edited, you went too far, so subtlety is definitely the key. Simple edits like a touch of brightness and a decrease in saturation will usually do the trick. With the iris and pupil, I like to see how far I can take it. The Sony a7R5 picks up insane detail, and sometimes the reflection in the eyes go crazy in the best way possible. Spiking the whites, clarity, and texture is a cheat code here. It takes the reflections from flat to glowing in seconds. As we flip between the before and after, notice how much brighter the pupils become. Those reflections paired with a gentle eye whitening give the eyes a clean and lifted look. I finish up this image with a quick cleanup mask at the bottom of the frame since it was noticeably darker. Brightening that area helped the whole portrait feel even more polished, and when we look at the before and after, you can see how the hair mask and eye enhancements stack together to create a killer portrait. Now for our third and final portrait of the day, we're combining concepts from the first 2 edits to build what I would honestly grade as a shot of the day level portrait. We have this image of Kerry Booth in the huddle. It is incredibly sharp, perfectly framed, and has sweat and emotion all over his face. A lot to work with here. Before I dive into the edit, however, I want to show you how I captured this shot. This channel is all about high-level education, behind the scenes, and real context on how these moments come together. So if I'm going to break down the edit, it is only right I walk you through the gear and setup that made these shots possible. I shoot on the Sony a7R5 paired with a 70-200 G Master 1. This allows me to shoot in incredible detail with 62.5 megapixels at a very low aperture of 2.8 to allow light into the frame without being too grainy. This image was also shot playing at Creighton, more specifically the CHI Health Center Omaha, which is a very nice and well-lit gym holding around 18,000 people. Professionals always say gear does not matter and that storytelling is a real skill, and that is true at the foundation, but top-tier gear gives you the freedom and flexibility to capture the story exactly how you want it to look. That being said, if you do not have this level of gear, do not let that stop you from taking these kinds of shots or making these kinds of edits. I I just wanted to give you context on how I get to my starting point, and if you want even more insight into how I shoot, I made a full 18-minute behind the scenes video for my entire trip to Creighton. Definitely check that out. Alright, back on topic and back in Lightroom to dial in this portrait of Carrie. I always start with exposure and move into dehaze, clarity, and texture. Sometimes these adjustments push the highlights a little harder than I want, so I just pull the highlights back to keep everything balanced. Same as before, we will build an iris and pupil mask to pull light and color back into the eyes and make them come alive. I like to go aggressive to start and then dial in the amount slider if need be. I follow that up by dropping the saturation in the ice glare, which is a simple but really effective cleanup. The third mask I used was for the hair, which has been the standard move in the last two edits. I usually switch between boost and highlights, whites, clarity, and texture, and sometimes drop the blacks a bit. It can be all of those adjustments or just a few depending on what the hair needs. Once the portrait was set, the sweat on the forehead stood out and I wanted to bring more detail into it. There is no advanced shortcut for this, so I used a brush to hit the beads of sweat and shiny spots across his head. In other portraits, you might have bigger, more defined sweat beads to work with, but here only a couple pops, so I lifted those and kept the enhancement subtle and realistic. And in terms of subtlety, once those sweat beads were selected, I only bumped the white slightly and added a touch of texture. It does not look like a massive change at first glance, but I always aim to keep my photos as close to what the eye naturally sees as possible, and small edits always compound when added together. So with the hair, eye, and sweat masks paired with our overall adjustments, this portrait of Carrie Booth goes from normal to a genuine standout. At the end of the day, it is all about enhancing the small details to create a long-lasting image. On screen are a few of my favorite color portraits from the season, all edited with the same approach you saw today. And if you're still here, I am working on a preset for my black and white edits. Here are a few examples with nothing changed except the preset itself, so stay tuned if that's something you would want to use in your own workflow. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any more free game, and drop a comment what you'd like to see next. Until next time.